Shinji and Warhammer40k, Chapter 46, The Last Love Song, Part 1.
It was the spring of 2016, and prophecies were dust in the wind. Lorenz Keel sat alone in the sealed council chamber. The door opened, splashing bright white light into a sealed room. Around him were corpses of white-haired boys. All of them had bullet holes to the head. All of them had a gun in their hands. A familiar face strode in. Akari. An alien confidence glimmered behind glowing red pupils.
"You are too late," said Lorenz Keel. "The trigger is no longer here. This egg is barren."
Lilith frowned minutely. From the corridor a red tide flowed, staining her shoes, rising, then the edges of her white lab coat. Lorenz Keel stared back, his eyes glowing red in the dark. For he too had a thin, delicate face with a shock of white hair. To command the mass production Evangelions remotely, he had to cast aside what remained of his humanity. This was a downgrade. Even as man stuffed full of machines to prolong his wretched life, he had pride that he was a man. Nagisa's hybrid body was nothing more than a hideous trap, short-term power in exchange for his soul. Those fools at Nerve didn't understand how at the end Seal fought to save them all. Keel heard hissing from around his ankles. The plug suit would dissolve momentarily, then his flesh. Digestion. That was Lilith's way, like a spider sucking out the juices of its prey. Metaphorically, the Lilith form of life was the harvest of civilizations. Like a dark phoenix, constantly dying and being reborn, twisting time and space to replay the same cruel play again and again.
"A murderous infant," he grunted through the pain, "trying to make sense of your existence through a distorted copy of Akari's consciousness. Fine then, carry out her grudge. We have delayed long enough."
The physical pain was irrelevant. It was an old friend. The torment of failure was greater still. Seal may have lost today, but it was crucial to draw Lilith away from Earth, to put the final plan into motion. He thought for a moment of those he had lost, his family, his daughters, and knew that even long dead they wouldn't be safe.
"Third impact was designed for us, not for you."
Lilith clenched her fist, and Keel felt his heart implode. As his vision turned white, then dark, he had only enough strength left to whisper,
"You fools, you knew not what you have."
Third impact was supposed to be the plan of escape. Many were worlds with bloody seas, dead in the cosmos, but all of them free. That was instrumentality. And then, there was only the hunger. The angels taught the world the meaning of ancient mammalian fear again. Man, this fangless, clawless biped that had decided it was the master of the world, was reduced to scurrying again under the shadow of aloof giants. When Adam's roar shook the world, so did the delusion of mastery come crashing down. And it was the stolen Earth's cradle that taught them that they could still fear despair. Mankind had come to terms with its weakness, turned it into strength. No fur for warmth, but there was fire. No fang to tear, no claws to catch, but nimble fingers that could build traps. No immortality, but the glory of civilization. Nagisa and the Cradle had rubbed everyone's face in their own weakness, turned their hope into ashes, and told them all that only power was power. Against the dark alien unknown, humanity had placed their faith in the torch of technology. They hedged their bets and made that capsule to later reclaim a shattered world. Hiding, surrendering, even before the battle has begun. If humanity was so eager to cower, Nagisa had no compunction about treading upon their backs, saw it as the omission of a human's inherent need to be ruled. As much as someone might snarl at being forced, a part hungered for well-defined limits. Comfort enough and no more. Heroes were those who were outside humanity's fearful dross. He was willing to become a monster, because only in conflict did the human heart reveal the truth deep inside. The cradle was broken, Nagisa driven to flee. Half human, half angel, but he wasn't as much of a monster as he pretended to be. But it was Nerve that made the world bleed. Nerve, ever holding the dagger of betrayal. Nerve, whose greatest sin was that they failed. They were the gate and the key, and they failed to keep the real monster locked up. They set loose the enemy that couldn't be fought with an Evangelion and any amount of bullshit hacks. Lilith was free. Adam slew half the world. The angels hurled themselves into the teeth of a fortress city, slaughtering everything in their way. The cradle crushed nations. So much death. Lilith did none of those things. The moon above turned red, becoming a bloodshot eye. Lilith, source of all life on earth, did inflict upon mankind a paltry little injury. Human beings functioned best on at least 8 hours of sleep. Humans who feared the dark would no longer rest in the darkness behind their eyes. There was no one else the Prime Minister of Japan hated more than Misato Katsuragi. "You've made your point, Katsuragi. What are your demands?"
"And again, this isn't our fault," Misato shot back. "We're just as lost about it as you are."
"I severely doubt that," he sniffed. The rigours of office could prematurely age a man, but now he looked and felt as if he had one foot in the grave. 3 billion people had suddenly come to a terrifying realisation how much they took for granted the ease of a good night's sleep. He had bags under his eyes, his nose felt stuffed up, his day was a haze of muted pain. Katsuragi looked as fresh as morning dew. "It's convenient that you people are the only ones not affected." Unspoken was the question. Are you even really human? Misato narrowed her eyes.
"You know why we're immune."
She responded silently, and if anyone tries to push this, I'll break them, no matter who it is.
"This place is where he sleeps."
Prime Minister Sakata winced. Why does it always go back to that boy? He had a feeling the only reason anyone even had that 2 hours of sleep was that there was this faint golden thread that still tied them to sanity. The Prime Minister sighed. "If he wakes up, can he fix this?"
"You know, I have no idea."
Misato's voice pitched up at the end. She looked to the distance, perhaps at Ritsuko Akagi just off screen from the monitor. From the look on her face, the Prime Minister knew Ritsuko's response was some particularly eloquent shrug. When Misato turned back to look at him, her expression had firmed again.
"I'm sorry, but the only thing we can do is repair, rebuild, and enact Plan 9. If we kill that goddamn angel, yeah, sure, maybe this will all go away."
Katsuragi, we're still displeased that Nerve's been hiding something that could cause third impact all this time.
"Secrets and conspiracies. Just noise. It's better to have it all out in the open so we just get the job done."
So be it. We're getting all our hopes in your hands. Too much power in anyone's hands. Sakata shut off the video phone and sagged down in his chair. There's no guarantee Nerve would let go after everything's all said and done. His brain felt as if on fire, and he opened his desk to down some more painkillers. Too much more and he'd be drowsy. But that was dangerous. Far too many have already died from overdose. People were willing to do anything that would force their body to shut down and give them a few hours of blessed sleep. "Won't it end?" he hissed. His hand shook. The angels had a way of making people feel weak and cowardly, and Nerve, their protectors, doubly reinforced that feeling. "Just make it stop. Leave us alone. Someone. Anyone. Make it stop." The upkeep of Nerve and its Evangelions could bankrupt small nations. The angels had wiped out cities from the face of the earth. Nagis's attacks had wiped out most of the armies of Europe and displaced millions. However, none of the attacks of the past year could actually shut down the world economy the way Lilith's simple conceptual hack could manage. People couldn't sleep willingly. Such a simple thing taken for granted. They would stay awake until their body had no choice except to shut down, but even on waking up afterwards they wouldn't feel refreshed. Tempers were always short, drugstores and markets were looted for narcotics and alcohol. Man, woman, child, adult, everybody was affected. Everybody fought over anything that could allow them to escape the waking world. People sought relief in whatever could break through the ache and the numbness. Riots and mobs flashed into being. Cities burned. More people died in suicides than all the casualties through the war against the angels. Murders skyrocketed. Babies never stopped crying until their helpless wails turned into weak, plaintive whimpers. Somewhere in America, a man who was trying to drive to work, mindful of the DMV's warnings about the lowered speed limit and making sure to keep substantial distance away from the next car over, died anyway. There was little difference between a truck and a crushing death machine, except a driver that usually had to force himself to stay awake. Somewhere in Spain, a man who had a gambling problem was knifed to death after a game. This would usually have been a statistical blip, except that it happened in a high-class casino. A mob had stormed the place, shouting that those who act in God's name would be granted rest. God had ordered places of sins and vice to be burned, and those inside sent to hell. It was a lie, started by someone who was feeling tired, bored, and spiteful. A thick carpet of corpses floated down the Ganges. In parts of Southeast Asia, people were going amok at random. A psychotic rampage, when a person just goes berserk, wanting nothing more than to kill and hurt until slain in turn. But such psychotic breaks weren't uncommon, even in other parts of the world. Many people found themselves far too willing to entertain quick, bloody, final solutions to any obstacles. If not a sudden urge to murder, some found cold, premeditated destruction to be strangely compelling. Fire was so beautiful, knives glittered enchantingly, high places so inviting. Here a college student of good repute decided to burn down a computer shop and everybody in it. He laughed as he too burned. There a man had taken fireworks, cans, nails and a minivan. He spent 30 minutes breaking people's windows. A woman bled her cheating husband, a child smothered a noisy baby, and a sudden brawl in the street ended up with burning tanks. Criminal elements had far less restraint now that even the police were stressed. But as much as some expressed their violence more openly, just as many found themselves torn apart by sudden, vicious mobs. It was amazing in its own way, how a burning haze through the days could make someone ignore all the fear of death. People were willing to try anything at all, just for the promise of relief. Drugs and alcohol, of course, the easy and obvious recourse. People were willing to try poisons, first weak ones, psychotropics, then stronger toxins. Some tried self-inflicted impacts and blows, maybe enough disorientation to escape the mind-crushing pain. Some tried to just pass the time. They wanted to consume, but few were still willing to work and deliver. They wanted to be entertained, but few felt well enough to provide. Government, media and medical services tried to keep things functioning, even if at minimal levels. Because no one felt well enough to produce new things, people tuned into the recycled works of years past. They shut themselves in and pulled the hole in after them. Thus, all over the world, communities began to dissolve into clutches and closed homes. Violence or isolation. No reason for it except the burning of their eyes and a crushing pressure inside their own skulls. Mankind was a being halfway between angel and ape. How so easily, if that equilibrium was ever disrupted, they could so easily turn back into a savage animal. Higher thought fled. If Karo Nagisa was still around, he would have said, "Humanity is a slave to his own biology. This is why I wanted to free you from the prison of mortal flesh." If Shinji Ikari was awake, he would have replied, "An external force messing with human minds isn't indicative of any weakness. It's an attack. Victim blaming is just as evil and unjust." Not even Seal could guess what Lilith wanted to know out of seeing humanity destroy itself. That, and they were all already dead anyway. They sought hypothesis, failed, were slaughtered for their affront, and perhaps in some small way escaped the living hell. But not Tokyo 3. Katsuragi had ordered all roads closed. Japan's JSDF were called upon to enforce that order. Hundreds of thousands, even millions of citizens were ready to storm the gates, and no one would have been able to stop them. Fortunately, a sleep rotation schedule was worked out for everyone's benefit. There was a tent city around Fortress City, even going halfway up the Hakone mountain range. Rikuzuna was once known for being a mouthpiece of criticism against Nerve, and had Shinji carrying the strange liberties afforded to the boy. Now, however, if she spoke, people would stop everything and listen, and people of all walks of life gave her undue deference. Because she was there, in that golden moment. Her proximity to the third child's awakening had somehow burnt something into her soul. It was a strange feeling, being the subject of inquiry for a change. All because for some reason she was immune to Lilith's brain hack. She could get tired, and feel sleepy, and dip into slumber, the next day stand up and smile. And more than that, she had a proximity similar to the sleeper zone in and around Tokyo 3. People around her could sleep. Her range was around 20 metres. World leaders were all but begging for her to visit. Celebrities were promising anything just to stand near her. Kidnapping and experimentation were credible dangers.
So this is what he must feel all the time,
Rika said dryly.
Only now can I really sympathise with the boy.
She laughed and her mouth tasted ashes.
Only now that I've gained everything I ever wanted. If only I could take back all I'd lost.
People love you and resent you because you have what they don't have, what they can't have, answered Kozo Futsky. He looked just as well rested. He didn't have a sleeper zone, but for some reason he was also wake-lock immune. They sat inside a private tea room. Both knew that outside the security detail was formed of half people on alert and half people taking the chance to finally take it easy.
What have you done? Katsuragi's official reason for sending you here is to finally come clean about Nerve's secrets.
I know my share, yes.
But that's not important anymore. You people, how could you keep going on, always getting the best end of the deal when everybody else just suffers? It's not fair. And now they think I'm from there, I'm one of you, and I'm not. I just want to be normal. I just wanted things to make sense. I just wanted you people to be accountable for your actions.
Plainly, Mr. Zuna, we don't. From the outside, it seems as if Nerve's mandate is to be unshakable. Now, you're experiencing how it feels from this side. For every step forward, it seems as if we actually step back. To be blunt, we've done many things. Many evil things, to be honest. We had a plan. That plan was junk. What works for us is just to do what we can and hope it works out somehow.
You people pull miracles out of your ass. That's what you do. I've interviewed people at the sleeper zone in and around Tokyo 3. You know what they say about this new problem you've caused?
She paused, remembering anguished faces. Faces full of greed and desperation, and the difference a single night makes. Normal was available at a steep price along the Hakone slopes. It was an irony that was cutting at her. Rika raved at a blank wall.
Out there. Why is it still so tiring even when I'm asleep? It's like I spent all that time screaming.
Ah, Akage did mention a theory about that. We've got a theory that it's working through the communal consciousness, and that is the vector for this attack. It's similar to how there's a part of our brain that's still reptilian. The human soul is also composed of layers. This time, we think it's actually a safety feature.
A safety feature? How so?
There's the terror that if you sleep, you won't wake up again. Human minds subconsciously recognize the existence that is Lilith, lurking just at the edges, and fear being devoured. Awake, we can throw up walls to maintain our identity, but asleep, the barriers weaken.
That doesn't explain why some people don't suffer this. Is it just that you're not afraid anymore?
Oh, gods no. I'm as terrified as anyone. Running Nerve did not in any way toughen me up or inoculate me against existential horrors.
If it's not some technology of Nerve, then it can only be...
Rika grimaced. Even now she was afraid, as if saying it would break the world. After all, she added,
that boy.
It wasn't just Tokyo 3, not just her. There was this little town up in Sendai, and the only newsworthy thing other than the rest afforded to its citizens was that it was the third child's hometown. Some places in Egypt, in Brazil, in Romania, in Tibet, in Utah, and in South Africa radiated a sleeper zone much smaller but similar to Tokyo 3. There was only one common thread tying those places together, that he had spent some time there, occasionally to battle Nagisa. The remains of Berlin and the shell of the Earth's cradle seemed to have this aura of significance too. Some children were for some reason better able to deal with the lack of sleep better. They could go into a semi-restful state. They reported a synesthetic sensation. Green. And drums. Far away but impossibly vast. Rika Zuna bit her lip, and when she slept, she saw a sword in flame, and its warmth seemed to burn away the cloying acidic mist billowing out from the depths. Fuyutsuki said nothing. He looked away and called up in his mind how Yu never showed him any tears. He admired her beauty, her intelligence, her reserve. During his time in the post-second impact world, but before Gendo found him, he had to console women who had lost their loved ones. When a doctor of philosophy was called upon to perform surgery, the madness of those days. He could tell Rikazuna was just about ready to break down. Those who think she has it easy have it wrong, he thought. This plague of wakefulness is tearing her apart as much as anyone. He'd never really gotten any better at consoling anyone.
I've been interviewing those who are able to sleep once they enter the sleeper zone, Rika continued. They say that while they sleep they're still so afraid, and they don't remember any dreams. They have this powerful vision of a golden thread, and as long as they hang on to it, they'll be okay.
What do they see? Those who sleep in your range?
They don't see anything, but they say it's as if they hear an echo from far away, and they shout at it and hear another echo, and it bounces, louder and louder the more they yell, and as long as that sound rings in the dark, they'll be okay.
Futsky nodded. Fascinating.
You?
Nothing so poetic, I'm afraid. I sleep. Sometimes I dream. Nothing has changed. I understand this may be very irritating to some people, but I'm an old man. It's lucky that I don't have to deal with any more stress.
You're lying,
Rika hissed through clenched teeth. My connection to Shinji Ikari is only peripheral. I'm just not that important in the grand scheme of things.
What's so special about Shinji Ikari?
I don't know.
Stop lying!
Look, I honestly don't know. Akagi doesn't know. The strongest psychics on Earth don't know. Not even Nagisa hinted he knew what was up with that. I can't help you here. Rika snorted.
Secrets and lies. That's what you're built on. Secrets and lies.
Futsky put down his cup and nodded again. Literally. Yes.
You must have done something. Nurse experiments. You took an alien god and made slaves wrapped in metal and pain. You made Ayanami as a disposable weapon. Of course it makes perfect sense that Ikari the Younger is just one more of your tools.
Unfortunately, that's just not so.
He's just a boy. Or is he? What is he?
This is getting downright biblical, Futsky chuckled. Of course, one could argue that it has always been biblical, but we didn't go into this whole thing to create a messiah.
It has to end. We can't keep on doing this forever.
Oh, I see. You're exhausted. Understandable, really. He halfway approved of how she kept rationalising instead of embracing the madness like Akagi had. The world's exhausted. Even the human spirit can only take so much.
It has to be worth it. I don't care about Shinji Ikari. But Toshiro, he had faith. He died for me. It has to mean something.
Her mind flashed back to the minutes before the golden moment. Sorry, Rika. I guess you'll have to manage things by yourself from now on. He stood with his back to hers, refusing to look back.
You stupid! I won't do it. There's no hope.
Rika's hands were shaking.
I'm not strong enough. I can't. Don't leave me. Not now. What's this boy done to you?
I'm not doing this for him. I'm doing it for you! Toshiro Manabu shouted. It was like he was leaping right out of his own skin. The glowing figure of Yu Ikari pulled at him as much as it inspired primal terror. Rika, what an annoying woman you are. You're selfish. You're loud. You're so full of yourself. You're so afraid of not being seen. The woman I love is stronger than this. Dry your tears, Rika. You have to survive.
This must end!
He died, accomplishing nothing, except to serve as more fuel for the boy's ascension. In between dry heaves, Rika whispered,
So, you old bastard, lie to me.
Futsky smiled and patted her hand. It will end. Soon. We have a plan, and if you have faith, we will prevail.
You fucking liar.
She couldn't help but laugh. Ritsuko Akagi beheld her laboratory.
I'm one of the world's most renowned geneticists, computer scientists, and biomechanists. I understand more about the Evangelion than anyone still alive,
she mumbled to herself. She clenched her fist, feeling the pull of artificial muscles from the outside, and the tingle of minute electric pads that forced her muscles to respond from within her suit.
I still should not be qualified for this.
She took a deep breath. She wasn't a surgeon. She wasn't a mechanical engineer. Someone with her own spinal injury shouldn't be trusted to perform an operation involving extreme amounts of finesse. But this was the sort of nonsense that seemed to keep Nerve going day after day. She turned away from the observation window down into the operating table.
I had to practically vivisect your boy, you know,
she told Misato later,
just to get him out of that weird armour. All analysis showed it was solid gold, 96% purity, the rest being a diamond weave through the metal. It should have been easy to cut through, except for being, practically invulnerable.
Misato sat in Gendo's chair. Where the former commander of Nerve would have curtly ordered Ritsuko to get to the point, she waited. Ritsuko needs to brag, Misato had realised long ago. Not for self-validation, but to place the impossible into the context of her reality.
I couldn't risk bringing in heavier cutting tools. Seriously, why do I even have a 4 gigawatt laser drill anyway? Or it might just cut all the way through and kill the patient. Even psychoreactive materials didn't help, and you know how that cuts through even Evangelion plate with no resistance at all. Ritsuko!
Misato sighed and tried to keep frustration from creeping into her tone.
So, what did you do? In the end, I decided that red jewel on the breastplate looked too much like an angel core, and that the whole thing sounded like an application of the reinforcing properties of the AT field. So, to beat it, I had to look for something which had greater authority. I'm pretty sure I would have heard about you using Unit 2 for that. No. In the end, I had to improvise a wire cutter out of the most fragile and improbable of materials.
She smirked and pushed up her glasses.
What has greater authority over Shinji Ikari? What being does he allow to command his powers with no hesitation? A single strand of your hair did what monomolecular edges could not. Bullshit! I wish I was joking, but this is completely true. Your hair is a conceptual weapon now, Misato. I still call bullshit on that! I've been there, Misato. Seriously, you put me there. That's not a good place to stand. My hair should fire lasers! And now I remember why Shinji looks up to you. I can't even tell if you're joking right now.
Misato raised a finger to her chin.
Note the serious face!
Then the light just seemed to fade from her eyes.
What's happened to him, Ritsuko? On the outside, nothing. On the inside, he has injuries consistent with a fire-related event several weeks ago. I saw scar tissue inside his lung walls and through his esophagus. His tongue is likewise a mass of scars.
Ritsuko laid down a large photo.
But you want the obvious. Yes, his eyes are gone. Scar tissue consistent with burns again. His eardrums have also burst with the same pattern.
With a shrug, she added,
Actually, it goes all the way through. There's similar scarring identifiable through the rectal cavity and... Stop! Look, Misato, I can't explain this. It's a wonder he didn't cook himself. For all intents and purposes, he should be dead. Doing the impossible has consequences,
Misato groaned.
Damn it, Shinji. Why'd you have to try and shoulder everything on your own?
She looked up.
But he's alive. What will happen now? What can we do to help? Nothing. He's in a coma, Misato. Not even I can predict when someone will wake up out of that.
Misato wanted to shout and rage, but could only nod numbly. Ritsuko gathered up her things, excused herself, making sure to leave the medical files, and left the room. Misato Katsuragi sat there, alone in silence, until a few minutes later her desk beeped. Commander Katsuragi, the ambassador from the People's Republic of China has arrived at the Hakone checkpoint. He has an appointment. Would you like to see him now?
No! We scheduled things so people could get a few hours of extra sleep before talking to me. Remind him that being made to wait 5 hours is supposed to be a courtesy, not an insult.
The Russian ambassador is also here.
Same thing.
Taking her finger off the intercom, she shot Ritsuko an annoyed look.
Those bastards! They're trying to double-team me, aren't they? And they both know we need their resources,
Ritsuko replied with a shrug.
Which one is it, you think? Priming you with unreasonable requests for the next one, or easier terms the first time around, so you have to pick either one big windfall or a bunch of smaller concessions? Who cares? I just need their help to build a launch facility. You have to start thinking for the long term now, Misato. If we lose now, we've got nothing left. But if we win, then the world changes forever. You're the one building that world now. Ritsuko. Damn it, I'm just a soldier. I'm not qualified for this geopolitical bullshit. The old man should have stayed. You know Fuyutsuki-sensei doesn't have near enough personal authority for that. Nerve's mandates used to derive from the United Nations. Your mandate is derived from, well, blatant extortion.
Misato let out a strangled little laugh.
Oh, God, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm going to fuck this up so bad.
Misato Katsuragi is a genius. No wonder Yang approved of her. It's always pleasant dealing with an officer who knows what she's doing. Nikolai Mikhailov mused idly while the elevator descended into Nerve.
Choosing to meet with us simultaneously is a breach of protocol and prevents voicing concerns best done in privacy. This may be a mistake,
replied Ming Huan. But you do not believe that. That would mean your venerable Yang made a mistake in extolling her competence.
This was not anticipated, I admit. If the purpose was to put us on the wrong footing, then it has succeeded. Katsuragi is no fool. She must have seen that despite the friction between our nations, it is to our best interest to cooperate.
The truth was, Misato just said,
Fine, I'll just meet them both at once and we can get this over with in double time.
The two rolled down the cable car leading from the surface of Tokyo 3 down to the geofront. They had taken the chance to nap upon entering the city, and it was convenient the ride was slow. It gave them the time to wake up fully. They didn't have a security detail to escort them down. They were treated as if mostly harmless, which was an insult in itself. Part of that was Katsuragi's policy that she mostly emphatically didn't care anymore if anyone snooped around. Intrigue was irrelevant in the face of human extinction. Impressive, said Mihailov. This geofront is a true wonder of the world.
Nerve Shenyang had one as well. Nerve Hakone simply lucked out in finding a natural geofront. Ours we had to dig out with the labour of 1 billion hands and nuclear arms.
Juan paused and frowned at his turn of phrase, then continued in a banal tone.
And it was much more defensible.
The scars from the recent battles still marred the terrain, scorched scars across a green backdrop. The hole in the geofront's roof drew a sparkling curtain of sunlight across the gap. Dropped buildings were sprawled over here and there, like fallen gravestones, the skeletal remains of mass production Evangelions. I hear most Nerve sites had extensive underground works anyway. The Americans' Nevada site was rumored to be 4 kilometers deep. This is a pretty site, though.
It is a wasteful use of space. Inefficient forests and lakes, instead of internal housing and farmland for a fortress city. A monument to ego.
And yet, with such limits, they were able to beat back the enemy again and again and again. I both wonder and dread what they will do with proper resources. He couldn't help sounding miffed about it. Russia, for all it had contributed to Project E, didn't possess a Nerve site. It made up for it with multiple regional defence bases, however. Nerve facilities had strong defences simply because they were as important as production sites. Properly designed bases meant for command and control were supposed to form the centre of humanity's defence against the alien angels. Now that we know why the angels kept attacking only Nerve, why 3 Evangelions could do what whole armies could not, I also wonder if it was lucky we didn't have a Nerve site. Then, belatedly realising the implications of what he'd said, My apologies. I did not mean to belittle the tragedy at Shenyang. As much as Nerve Berlin was paid for by the countries of Europe, Nerve Shenyang was an unprecedented cooperative effort by China and Russia. That was how Russia could feel comfortable reaping all the benefits of Avatech without having their own build site. Russia had 2 slices of the pie, one in the east and another in the west.
Nerve Shenyang, the Shinji site, would have been the perfect killing ground,
Juan whispered through grit teeth.
Well away from anything important. All facilities buried underground in levels with alternating armor plates. None of this floating city retracting building tourist trap nonsense. Plenty of extra room to build. Walls, real walls, and enough artillery to darken the sky. Japan prototyped the control systems. Germany the physical frame. America the power systems. But we were meant for mass production.
Then the angel codenamed Sahakriel happened, Mihailov said somberly. The largest death toll through this year of war against the Angels was suffered by China. The US suffered the total loss of Nerve Nevada, but it happened in the middle of nowhere. Shenyang was deep inland, supposedly to mitigate the damage, but Sahakriel wiped it off the face of the earth. The only reason it didn't cause greater tectonic shocks and tsunamis was that the bombardment relied much more on AT field matter disruption properties than sheer kinetic force. Millions died all around the Yellow Sea anyway.
1 billion hands, 1 billion hearts being as one. If they could perform miracles with only this many people, imagine what could have been if the reason given wasn't just an elaborate smokescreen. They made us waste hundreds of trillions just to have an excuse to build up this place. It would have been acceptable if we could have fought it. Or that death, if only it had meaning.
Acceptable? They would have died anyway, but as long as they could have performed one final gesture of spite, that's all you need to feel comfortable with it.
We exist for a purpose. It doesn't matter if we fail, as long as we attempt to fulfill that purpose. Our nations are made on the precept of the people having collective power to free themselves. Instead, we were just tools to further Nerve's lies.
Shen Yang was a legitimate military target. As you said, you were building the MP Evas there.
We were! And later, we saw multiple MP Evas. From where? Who built them? Meaningless. The power of the Eva was never contained in the first place. The risks we suffered was for nothing.
There was a rumour that Misato Katsuragi had said, "Give me 3 Evangelions, and I can conquer the world." Huarden paused and took a deep breath. Considering the sheer bullshit Evangelions based here could pull, conventional armies were completely useless against an Eva. They had no peer opponents.
That may be possible, if one didn't consider how long the world remains unconquered. Our nations also understand the pains of asymmetric warfare more than most.
There was also that she already had those 3 Evas. 3 children to pilot them, already proven slayers of would-be gods in the flesh. Was that supposed to be a boast or a threat? It also kind of explained the whole personality cult they were building around Shinji Ikari, come to think of it. It wasn't a hypocritical thought for Huan, because that was something they deliberately cultivated around Yang. It all comes back down to resources. Katsuragi is a brilliant tactician, but she may not be so adept at dealing with logistics. That's what you call Yang, the great strategist, correct? I wonder what she expects in exchange for resolving this global affliction that is, for once, something we can trace as completely Nerve's fault.
They are a single city, and are completely dependent on outside forces for their resources and upkeep. By all rights, they should be begging for donations.
Like the Vatican? That mini-state on top of a hill survived Second Impact well enough, but for some reason someone had decided to use a nuke on the place. No one claimed responsibility in the chaos. Katsuragi's little fiefdom exists only because others allow it. What's that old saying? A paper tiger. In the short term we need her. In the long term she isn't much of a threat, if properly handled.
Yes, with Yang there, Nerve had the tacit approval of the dragon. Ikari, and now Katsuragi, was by implication able to use us as leverage against the own Japanese government for concessions. It is only fair that we gain something from this arrangement.
Katsuragi has the right to throw into our faces any attempt at taking advantage of this situation at the expense of what would help the survival of all mankind.
She does not have the luxury of turning away help as well. Everybody I know wants to help as long as she promises the hurting will stop. If we can finally end this futile, senseless conflict. All I'm authorized for now is a discussion of the new status quo after the war is won.
Considering the rampant escalation after every battle, it was a valid worry if the war could be won at all, or if there'd be a planet left after the end of it. A world without angels. A world without nuclear weapons. Let's hope there's something there. 30 minutes later, halfway into their discussion about technology exchanges, Misato hid her face in her hands.
You know, it's totally a funny coincidence that you compare our situation here to the Vatican.
When they found out Misato's plan, it wasn't funny in the least. Misato Katsuragi now sat in the unnecessarily wide commander's office in Gendo's old desk, and the amber of sunset lit the room as if on fire. She had a grim look on her face, and had laced her hands together just under her nose. It was a pose familiar to those that knew Gendo Ikari. It had less to do with plotting devilry than to keep herself from smashing her own head into the desk until either it breaks or she knocked herself unconscious. Kaji stood before her, grinning, with a lit cigarette on his lips.
"So, how does it feel being the most powerful woman in the world?"
he asked.
I'm not in the mood for any of your jokes, Kaji, Misato hissed. Honestly, it feels like shit. I never asked for this.
Can't contest the fact, though. Look at it from other people's perspective. Fact. Tokyo 3 just managed to defeat attacks by enemy mass production Evangelions. Fact. Soyuz single-handedly defeated the Earth's cradle, a floating battle fortress that no amount of earthly power could defeat. Fact. Ikari just shielded a whole city from every nuke that the whole world could send, without even using an Evangelion. Fact. With Soyuz's return, you now have command over the world's only functioning Evangelion. The only other functioning Nerve site is Nerve Boston, and they know, even if they have the facilities to build Evangelions, there is fuck and all they can do to match the inhumanely efficient killing machines that you've all but decided to adopt as your kids.
Enough! They're not monsters, damn it! We forced this on them!
If they were afraid before, Misato, now they're too terrified to even be resentful about being shown up as powerless and insignificant. You know Yang's plan. The treasure box is open, and Akagi's toy box is ready to be wound up. This, or something like this, was inevitable.
Misato slammed her palm down on a folder on her desk. Shinji carries medical records.
It's not worth it! I never expected this. Children, they're the ones that suffer. I can't accept always taking advantage of their sacrifice.
If you don't, that sacrifice is worthless. Misato, stop pitying them.
It's another miracle, they told me, that Shinji-kun's still alive. They found burns scarring down his throat. They have artificial lungs pumping oxygen into him. His own lungs became this lattice of black crystals. They said his hair is made out of superconductors now. What the fuck is this, Kaji? I swear, I will fucking shoot the next person who offers me congratulations. I refuse to profit off my child's pain!
That's probably why Yang trusted you so much. He knew you didn't give a damn about glory, advancement, patriotism, humanity, whatever. You only care about doing good to your kids, and if what they want is to save the world, you'd support them the best you can.
Yang's dead. I don't care about his plans. And you, stop trying to turn me into some kind of tyrant.
If you won't do it, maybe Asuka would like to serve as the figurehead uniting humanity. Soya the Great isn't too unlikely.
You're trying to goad me, and it's working. Ugh. Any more and I'll shoot you. Somewhere non-lethal, but trust me, I will.
The spy only gave back a completely nonchalant smirk.
The old man's already off to meet the United Nations as your mouthpiece. Part of why the government's so pissed at you is because you've got the support of China and Russia, who are competitors if not old enemies. Old grudges, ethnicity, who cares? Japanese, Chinese, Russian, German. That's all irrelevant now. At least irrelevant here.
Kaji spat out his cigarette and ground out the embers under his shoes.
Come on, Katsuragi. You know this is the best way to protect your children. They, and you, can't keep on running forever. You know what they say? With great power
Stop! Damn it, Kaji, just stop.
Comes great responsibility.
You don't work for the UN or the Japanese government anymore. They fired your ass because they thought you were compromised by me. I'm only going to give you a job to make sure it'll be the lowest, stinkiest possible thing I can make you do.
I'm happy to serve the Republic of Katsuragi.
I'm not calling it that!
The word on the street was secession. Tokyo 3 had just declared itself an independent nation, and all nerve sites across the world as part of its sovereign territory. And there was nothing strange about micronations. The Vatican, for one, was one of the most famous examples. And disturbing, Tokyo 3 has too much similarity to the Vatican. All they needed now was a public cult. Cerberus Base was built by the UN, staffed mainly by the JSSDF, and nominally under international control. Most soldiers decided to defect. Their base and all equipment were seized by the new government. The entire Hakone region ceased to be part of Japan. That was what Fuyutsuki was arguing for at the UN headquarters. Officially, the Japanese government protested such a rash decision. Unofficially, war was no way to quell this rebellion, and Katsuragi had too much political capital to just ignore. Even economic sanctions wouldn't suffice, for the people all around Tokyo 3 knew just how much those who stuck with the fortress city suffered for all the world's sake. Refusing food and trade with Hakone would just look ungrateful. They could only present it as a power play by Katsuragi, but the woman didn't even care to deny it.
This war with the angels will end, and soon we will all be free, she said calmly, and the power of the Ava must not be misused in the world we're leaving to our children. I'll be honest, I don't trust any of you not to put your own regional interests first. I'm not going to conquer anybody, nor will I waste my time playing peacekeeper. Solve your own damn problems to prove you've grown up, instead of asking my children to sacrifice for you.
That Katsuragi was offering such insult to her own country, whereas perhaps one part of Wei Yang's plan was palatable to his students, the generals. Better to be friendly and seek a closer relationship with the fortress city, and perhaps the better to find and exploit a moment of weakness. With their own nerve sight gone, this was their best chance at acquiring Ava technology. Perhaps this was the same reasoning why Germany backed Katsuragi's declaration full tilt. Soyu's legend had just begun, but it continued to grow. Katsuragi's call for a sort of foreign legion drew plenty of volunteers from all over the world. Only about half of them were expected to be spies. All one had to do to remember the danger that excused Katsuragi's brass was to look up at the sky at night. The lover's moon was gone. The moon bled, an angry red. Summer up there was a horror that could take you even when you're dead. Human beings all over the world couldn't sleep simply because somewhere deep in their souls they recognised the presence of something that deemed them prey. Only Nerve truly understood that they had nothing anymore, zero capacity, to undertake Plan 9. Ikari and Ayanami couldn't be martyrs. Not yet. There was only again that agonising wait. Nerve still had secrets, but none anymore that were so earth-shattering. Kozo Fuyutsuki stood before the UN General Assembly, perfectly candid that Nerve had all along been designed to cause third impact, not prevent it. Now, this is not completely a bad thing. He raised his hand to forestall objections. Hold on, let me explain. The Human Instrumentality Project, as Karo Nagisa told you, is meant to force the human race to evolve into a superorganism. It is practically self-inflicted extinction, yes. The resulting immortal being can barely be called human. However, this is just one of the possible results of third impact. If you recall, second impact involved a tremendous release of energy, enough to affect the whole world. If you've read of what can be done with the AT field, there are ways to use that energy constructively. The third impact event could be used to fix the damage caused by second impact. We now know that second impact was caused by the alien in Antarctica. What rights does Nerve have to risk the same thing happening again? The representative from France asked. None at all. This purpose is something that only a select few even in Nerve are privy to. Which was true enough, but at the same time an outright lie. This is what defines Katsuragi's administration after all. She believes in Nerve's open goal of defending humanity, not imposing upon it. Did you know that Gendo Ikari wanted to pursue instrumentality, Professor Fuyutsuki? No, I was led to believe he had another goal entirely. The old man smiled gently. Again, the complete truth. Standing in front of so many people didn't stress him any. It was a familiar, comforting place to be. That his audience was composed of world leaders and functionaries was irrelevant. He was in full lecturing mode. The truth about second impact and Nerve's purpose has been presented in 3 tiers. There's the one told by the media and on the school books, that a high-speed undetectable meteor struck Antarctica. There's the truth that the backers of Nerve tried to hide, that aliens were coming and the Evangelions were needed to find them. And there is the last truth, that the angels are not alien beings at all. The screen behind him showed second impact, an atom spreading its wings of light. He glanced up at it, then back to his audience. What you see before you is the awakening of the first angel, codenamed Adam, causing second impact. It was only narrowly averted by the actions of the Katsuragi expedition, leaving aside how they caused it in the first place. Only one person survived to witness it firsthand, Misato Katsuragi. The sight traumatized her and left her in a traumatized state for several years. The AT field is closely related to the expression of a soul, and we do have scientific proof that the human soul exists. Now look there, see those white motes emerging from Adam as it begins to lose cohesion? Those are the shards of its soul, each a distinct entity that would solidify into angel cores. Yes, they all knew from the start that there could be between 20,000 to 250,000 angels spread out all over the world. Not even Nerve could hope to defeat all of them. Even if we succeed in maintaining Nerve sites like bug zappers, luring angels to their doom instead of allowing them to attack other human cities, we would be looking at a future of only war. Do you understand yet why a controlled third impact sounded so attractive? If the release of energy associated with second impact could permanently remove the angel threat and repair the damage on a global scale. Adam, I see, because it's the source. The first angel, spoke up the President of the Indian Republic. The subcontinent had suffered greatly in the aftermath of Second Impact, and he'd come to New York feeling that he needed to hear the confession firsthand. That is why the angels kept attacking only nerve sites, because Evangelions are built from its cells. But we have heard rumors that Nerve Tokyo had 2 such beings, not just Adam. No, under the Katsuragi administration, Nerve will not keep any more secrets. Just lie its ass off, apparently. The geofront of the Hakone is not a natural occurrence. I know the official explanation is that, as an extinct volcano, Hakone left an uncollapsed cavity. The proof is that the geofront is an alien spacecraft. There is an identical one at Antarctica. Adam was reduced through its awakening in Second Impact in Antarctica. It was contained and held in Nerve Germany. Nerve Japan and the Artificial Evolution Laboratory studied the angel we codenamed Lilith, the source of all life on Earth, and the mother of humanity. A mild uproar spread through the gathering until someone asked for him to explain. This is not meant as hyperbole. The panspermia theory is essentially correct. Only instead of microorganisms, Earth actually had 2 beings capable of creating life. That they opposed each other is the only reason it took billions of years for life to evolve. The representative from Sweden asked for permission to speak. So that is why Evangelions are called Evas. They were made from Adam's rib. This naming system has always sounded a bit too dramatic, but I suppose it fits the pattern. And Lilith is named that because it is equal to Adam. Is that right, Professor? That's so. But how is it directly responsible if Adam and Lilith's organic material is what allowed life to evolve on Earth? This goes into the paradox of how evolution on Earth comes through adaptation and random mutations, while at the same time being directed towards an end result. You see, intelligent life is more than just DNA and bundles of neurons. Physically, evolution drove us towards Homo sapiens. But Homo sapiens sapiens, the missing link for the being that truly thinks, will not be found in the fossil records. When the first human was born with a real human soul, instead of the animal soul. The difference between the animal soul and the human soul, born of Lilith, is that the animal is alone. It dies and returns to nothing. We humans develop the collective unconsciousness, and it's rather one step away from becoming a superorganism. We are angels as well, but our template is Lilith, not Adam. The second angel's slow awakening drove human evolution towards this bipedal, bilateral, 5 fingers on a hand creature we see in the mirror. We dug into the geofront and found wombs sized either for giants or for people like us. As we humans grow and live and die, we feed that collective oversoul, and we create a being that will eventually become like Lilith. The psychic power evidenced by the UN Psychana draws from this pool. Instrumentality may be inevitable.
What now Lilith is awake, correct? What does this mean?
Again asked the representative from India. If Adam was so destructive, then what about the other?
Isn't it an intelligent being? You made Ayanami as a hybrid of human and angel genes and she went berserk. But can't we negotiate with it?
Lilith's oversoul cannot exist in the same metaphysical space as the human oversoul. This, I believe, is why everybody is having difficulty sleeping and having disturbing dreams. No, in the end, Lilith also seeks our destruction.
That can't be. You say Lilith is responsible for creating humanity. Why would it want to destroy us?
Why does a gardener tend to his fields? These are beings who operate on vast timescales, where culture and all achievements are as dust in the wind. Do not mistake care for benevolence. The angels by Adam only seek to reunite with their parent. Lilith seeks the harvest. Instrumentality, ironically, would have been sufficient defense against this. A being that does not exist in the material world, a pure soul, is stronger than even this world beneath our feet.
But all the nukes we had left were launched towards Nerve to prevent third impact. It's impressive that Nerve repelled both Lilith and that attack. Is it possible to defeat the second angel?
You've seen the Red Moon. If she were to come down and fight our Evangelions, perhaps. But as long as she remains out of reach, the human oversoul erodes night by night as she exists.
What does that mean? How long do we have? Asked the US representative. A space mission may not be out of question. We've all seen Castle Stonebrand fly using the AT field.
That's not something we can know for sure. Paranoia, madness, and delusion will destroy us long before Lilith can get to absorbing the human oversoul. As more people die, it grows. Culture and society are irrelevant to such a being. It may choose to leave us alone simply to improve the crop, or it may decide its long sleep has left it famished and kill us all in our sleep. I'm sorry, but this is not something the power of the Evangelion can help with. Let me play devil's advocate for a moment. A controlled third impact will do the same to Lilith as it would Adam, exhaust her energy. This was how instrumentality works, to sap Lilith, and instead of wasting it on simple force like Adam's aborted awakening, to feed it to the human supersoul.
Is third impact still possible?
Kozo Fuyutsuki frowned and took a full minute pass before he spoke again. Yes, and no. Obviously, with Lilith awake, a controlled third impact scenario is no longer possible. But Saikana have proposed an alternate situation. Trigger a reversed instrumentality. Instead of exalting humanity into a superorganism, pull up the depth of millions of years and consume the human subconscious gestalt as a weapon against Lilith.
Well, that sounds like it has horrible consequences as well. Would it really work?
I don't know. It's only been presented as possible because Shinji Ikari already does this. When he repelled Lilith in the strike of all the world's nuclear arsenal, that energy came from the collective will of humanity. I don't know what will happen if we keep on using up the energy. Simply speaking, psychic phenomena are different from the AT field because it's powered by... quantum ghosts. Instead of a region of absolute authority, a region where anything can happen because it is in a state of ultimate uncertainty. We are using up humanity's own life force. It may be necromancy. It may be destroying potential geniuses. It may be eating the souls that would otherwise be born again. Humanity's population might shrink to unsustainable levels, infertility across whole generations because new souls can no longer be produced. No one can predict what will happen. But it is irrelevant, because our only trigger for this already burned himself out trying to do it.
So there is no hope, is that what you're saying? We can't fight back against this angel? There has to be something we can do instead of just lying down and waiting to die or go insane.
If you believe in God, pray to God. If you believe in Buddha, recite mantras. Something like that. Strengthen your soul. Listen to the understanding that crosses between all ages, genders, borders, and ethnicities, and perhaps the will of mankind will again express itself. You can also hope that Shinji Ikari wakes up soon, for if the golden light can burn him, it may be able to heal him too. And then we have again a steering wheel for the human psychic gestalt.
Well, that sounds like wishful thinking. It doesn't do anything.
It's the only advice I can give that can protect the human supersoul. On more practical matters, give us extra funding so we can prepare for an assault on the moon or defense against an all-out attack from the angels. We have one functional Eva left. There are potentially hundreds of thousands of angels that may awaken. Kara Nagisa is still out there. Lilith is trying to eat the souls of generations still unborn. What you can do is decide which is the biggest threat right now. He went on a bit longer to wrap up his speech, and accepted the thanks of the assembly. For some reason, delegates took his gentle smile as if an attempt at intimidation. One by one, those he spoke to eventually said they would offer support or think over what they could contribute. Fuyutsuki made it a point to also speak to the poorer nations who had no material or even manpower assistance to offer. Hope was fuel. Trust was power. Though he had been deputy commander of Nerve for a long time, and for a very short time supreme commander, he took the instructions well. In this way, he too helped to fight the overwhelming power constantly arrayed against human existence. Katsuragi can be trusted. Nerve is in the habit of making miracles happen. Give us the resources, give us your trust, and we can try one more time to create hope where there is none. To do the impossible and break the unbreakable. You know this is no idle boast.
The famous strategy room,
Mayumi whispered, as she and the other pilots arrived at the commander's office. A large mirrored desk now dominated the space, though the desk was still a foreboding distance away. Misato waited at the head of the conference table. It certainly fit the aesthetic of a place where momentous world-shattering decisions were made. It was a pity she didn't know it was the first time for all of them to use it. Mayumi looked at the people deemed worthy of this gathering, and blushed at being so honoured to even just sit and listen to them. Katsuragi looked foreboding in her formal uniform, wearing a jacket like a cape. She was the very picture of a woman that can be a respected leader of men without surrendering her femininity. Sitting to her left was Ritsuko Akagi, in her distractingly adult version of a plug suit. All black, with exposed Mayama bundles running into caps over her joints and curves. It made her look nuder than nude. Her eyes couldn't be seen behind the eerie golden reflection of her glasses.
This is the ferocious genius that saves the world, Mayumi thought. The court magician wrapped in the arcane that no one else can understand.
On the opposite sat Kaji Ryuji. With his stubble and exaggeratedly relaxed pose, his handsome face could only look seedy and untrustworthy. Yet it was known even to her that this was a man who somehow had many masters. Who but a master of spycraft could convince so many competing forces to simultaneously use him as a cast-paw? Such a thing like that does not arrive by coincidence.
Even now, could he truly be on Katsuragi's side?
2 sets of chairs were left vacant, mostly for elbow room, and so Ritsuko could stand up and move things around on the table without getting into other people's personal space. However, to Mayumi, it also showcased the gap between the core of Nerve's power and the other forces that fought to support them. Colonel Nasuno, who had thrown away his pride, and some might say honour, as a man of the JSSDF to defend Tokyo 3 alone. The commander of Cerberus Base had the haggard expression of a man constantly called to perform outside his depths, but was doggedly determined to see it through anyway. He sat on the right, below Kaji. Facing him was a man in orange robes, the monk named Autumn, now the last of the UN Psychana's command staff. Mayumi didn't let his gaze linger too long. Though most of the more powerful Psychers had died defending Shinji from the cold Lilith humaniform angel, she had no idea if he could also just casually pluck thoughts right out of the air. Then 2 more empty rows. The pilots sat as a power block unto themselves. Soryu, of course, drew Mayumi's attention first. Though the girl affected a bored expression, Mayumi could see dark shadows under her eyes. Rage and despair at being too late, and worry for the one she loved. Mayumi could hardly begrudge her idol that. Even the legendary Red Devil had a right to be human and flawed in previous privacy. And facing her was a girl as opposite it could be. Red to blue. A skin so pale and so flawless it might as well have been that of a doll. Were it not for the bandages and eye patch she was still wrapped in, Ayanami's placid expression could have made Mayumi think this was an emotionless mannequin instead of a person. She had to remind herself that Ayanami was also friend and rival of sorts to Soryu, and equal in all that matters. The Blue Angel, a moniker with many meanings. Then, facing her personally, was Mana Kirishima. Though she wasn't born with the aptitude to be an Ava pilot, she was still special. A short-haired, boyish face. She could only look cute even when at the fiercest. The Commissar of Cerberus Base, inspiring normal people to fervour via example. She was also sometimes called the girlfriend of Steel for some reason. She looked mullish and impatient, tilting her skull-decorated cap down over her eyes, as if to hide an attempt to take a nap.
A normal person?
Mayumi could only snort.
Not likely. It takes a special person to fight beside the Ava.
And lastly herself, Mayumi Hamagishi. Nervously she scratched at the mole near her lips. She couldn't even imagine being as strong as these other girls her age. If she could only dare wish, she'd be anyone but herself. Maybe with red hair like Soryu. Even a different name, a stylish one like Makanami or something.
Alright, let's get this meeting into order.
Mayumi was jerked out of her idle fantasies by Misato's shout. She blushed and cowered in embarrassment.
Before we begin, perhaps we should list our assets,
Ritsuko said. At Misato's wave continued, Ritsuko lit up the table to turn it onto a display screen. A larger version without letterboxes was displayed on the ceiling above.
These are our forces. No offence, Colonel Nasuno, if the regular forces aren't part of the list.
Now taken, he replied easily.
1 fully functional Evangelion, Unit 2. 1 semi-functional Evangelion, without legs, Unit 4. 1 non-functional Eva, without a head, Unit 0. And that's it. Unit 1 is on the moon. The Trident Land Dreadnought is still lacking a reactor.
So basically
it's just me, said Asuka. Unless someone wants to play gun tank, Mana said with a slight smirk, her eyes still hidden under the brim of her hat. Mayumi blushed. Colonel Nasuno raised his hand and said with all seriousness, I vote that any suggestion that Ada might say be preemptively classed as retarded and now to be discussed at the table. Agreed, Ritsuko and Asuka in unison. I also agree. Motion passes, Misato sighed. Any more interruptions? No? Ritsuko, go ahead. As you all know, our Governor General... I realise now you all kept calling me El Presidente just to make me think that title was any better. Governor General Katsuragi announced her authority over all nerve bases and assets worldwide. The US government has agreed to cede Nerve Boston, but then pulled out all personnel and locked down the base. It's petty, but understandable. It's not like we have the budget to keep going. They offered a new agreement for shared ownership of the base, allowing them to build new Evangelions. I'm actually surprised they're not putting up a fight about it, Colonel Nasuno spoke in a hush. We don't have anything to seize control of the base if they decided to challenge Nerve's ownership. Ritsuko pointed to Mayumi, the pilot from Nerve Boston, who eat. She raised her hand as if to ward off the attention, then realised that Ritsuko Akagi, was actually expecting her to explain it for her. Her vision began to white out. Hey, relax, little beast! And just Asuka's tone was enough to bring her back from the brink. Nerve Boston's the only place on Earth still capable of producing the S2 engine. That makes them the best target for anybody who wants to gain or destroy Ava technology. They want Unit 4 back. Or at least an Ava to defend themselves. Misato?
What's a nerve site without an Evangelion?
Kaji mused. Misato just shook her head and waved for Ritsuko to continue.
Let's leave that for later then. The next item on the agenda. The S2 engine that was supposed to be sent here to repair Unit 0. China has it. That's bullshit! They can't get away with that! That's Nerve property!
Asuka spat. Misato sighed. Asuka apologised and waited for Nerve's official response.
Yes, but if we send you out to take it back, that compromises our defence of Tokyo 3. Sure, in an open war, we could crush all the armies of the world combined with the power of the Ava. But we can't move and they know it. Bastards!
Yang's toy box agreement. They're using that as the excuse. They'll give us the S2 engine if we help them. If we get Nerve America to agree to build them a new Evangelion. They'll even send the pilot to us. No strings attached.
Kaji spoke out. Misato groaned again.
Already everybody's trying to loophole me about proliferation. What the hell?
Our own country already thinks we're a threat. Aligning even more with China's now going to help secure our funding and resources from just the next city over, said Colonel Nasuno. Just as the Vatican is dependent upon the auspices of Rome, so we depend upon the cities around the Hakone region, said Autumn. The Saikana was now a much diminished body, and he wasn't confident in speaking up about military affairs. The need for food and to keep people's goodwill, however, of that he was sure.
I don't trust them, the US or China or anybody with control over the Evangelions, Misato said flatly. Pressuring me won't earn them any points.
I'm not sure if anyone can be trusted with all the power you're trying to monopolize, Misato,
Kaji replied with a smirk. Mayumi's breath stuck in her throat, but then Misato just groaned again.
So, this is the famous Nerve laissez-faire then?
It's a wonder they could get anything done. But her respect for the spy rose. Brave to so blatantly contradict the chain of command, even with the rumours of his relationship with Katsuragi.
He's acting like a fool, but in the old days, it was only the fool that could get away with criticising the king. Your ideals on Ava proliferation aside, we do need more Evangelions and Evangelion pilots. With Pilot Akari still unconscious, and Ayanami unable to sync with the Ava anymore, our options are extremely limited.
Mayumi's attention snapped to the blue-haired girl. What? Asuka leaned back on her chair and glared at the other girl. Ray stared back at her, completely unperturbed.
This useless doll! Saw you!
Mana's tone was curt and designed to cut through the noise of a battlefield.
Don't presume on things you don't understand, Kirishima. I understand enough about respect for a comrade's sacrifice. Enough!
Misato laid her hand gently on the table, and yet that drew everyone's attention more than if she'd slammed her palm down with full force. She tapped at the conference table's surface lightly.
This isn't the place for that. Settle down, or you can solve the issue with your fists outside.
Asuka and Mana looked sorely tempted, but then bowed in apology. What? Mayumi blinked again. With their fists? Shouldn't a commanding officer discourage that sort of thing?
What are our options, Ritsuko?
Kaji asked to suddenly shift the mood.
We have the option of removing Unit Zero's legs and placing them on Unit 4, if our Governor General approves. Sorry, Ray, it's only going to be temporary,
Misato said. The girl gave no response, only to stare blankly ahead.
Then we have the option of accepting both offers of China and the US, the S2 engine and new incomplete Evangelion they were building in Boston. That gives us the soonest possible new Ava. No! Katsuragi, we don't have the resources to build another Ava here, and while China may have outright stolen the engine, we still need that. It's extortion. But what can we do? That's politics. No, there's something else. Something simpler.
Misato smirked.
Those guys over there, they think they're so clever trying to think. What would Yang do? Well, I tell you what he wouldn't have done. Pissed me off like this. Yang and Shinji-kun, I have a feeling this is something they've been expecting me to do, making it necessary for me to do it. For a while now. Katsuragi, our constitution explicitly requires consensus between Kaji, me, and at least 3/4 of the pilots before you're allowed to declare war on anybody. Ha! No, that's stupid. It's time they realised why those two were so insistent on Nerve becoming its own independent entity. They want the toy box? Ritsuko, open it! That's even worse reckless escalation. You know this?
What's the toy box? Mayumi wanted to ask. If it could influence Katsuragi's decisions to this extent, it had to be really important. Former Nerve America didn't expressly ask her to spy, but unless Nerve Hakone forbid it, they said they would appreciate any information she could give. Mayumi Hamagishi stared at each of the people in that room, arguing over her head about Katsuragi's idea. A naturally shy and work-oriented person, already mentally filing away impressions and thinking about how to word a report, she wondered at the value of what she was allowed to observe. Priceless, probably. If they would send her away from Tokyo free and away from her hero's side, Mayumi felt she may be spiteful enough to give away such information. It wouldn't count as betrayal. Probably. Mayumi Hamagishi was told a clone of Ayanami Rei went berserk and killed the original. Then Kozo Futsuki appeared before the UN and under Katsuragi's policy of no more secrets, told the world about Lilith, the second angel, and Adam, the first angel. Second Impact was the first angel's early awakening, and it seeded the world with angels, potentially thousands of angels, like a phoenix burning as it dies, only to be reborn in flame. The second angel, a being equal to Adam, was used as the source of the biomechanical organs that make up an Evangelion. In a lesser way, Lilith's cells were also fused into a human, to become a living weapon, a disposable pilot. Before her now stood a girl of icy countenance, Ayanami, the girl who dies and dies again, Nerve's blue angel. And now in an empty corridor with Asuka Langley Soryu, the Red Devil, accosting her. Really, Mayumi considered, there was no other way she could put it. Asuka looked like a schoolyard bully facing down her favourite victim.
You there! Who the hell do you think I am?
You are Pilot Soryu.
And do you know who you're supposed to be?
I am the fifth.
You're not her,
Asuka added with a sneer.
The fourth was my friend. She gave her life. She gave her soul, and you! You're an insult. You're worse than a doll.
Mayumi gasped. Even through the haze of her hero worship, that sounded too cruel, too full of blind prejudice. Never did she imagine Soryu could be so spiteful. The story said that Nerve Tokyo 3's stable of high superhuman, and occasionally blatantly, superhuman pilots were fiercely competitive, but did it actually cross into clear hatred? Rei only nodded. It is as you say. Something red flashed, and Rei's head snapped back. She blinked. She reached up to touch her nose, and her fingers came away red with blood. Asuka lowered her fist, her expression firm, her shoulders shaking.
She wouldn't have let me get away with that.
I'm sorry. Asuka's fist shot out again. Ray didn't even flinch. Her head snapped to the side as Asuka's fist caught her by the edge of her cheek.
She was a person! She had feelings, she had hopes, she was my friend! Damn you all! Nobody should get to sigh in relief and think it's just Ayanami. Her death, her life has meaning. She was my friend and she died. I was too late and she died.
Soyu.
Speak for yourself, damn it. Fight back! Tell me she's still alive inside you!
I cannot. A third time, Asuka reached out, but this time pulled her fist short.
Fight back, damn you!
You are Soyu. You are able to pilot the Evangelion while I cannot. Your well-being is infinitely more valuable than my own. Asuka bared her teeth and shook with rage. She bent down, preparing to scream and leap.
Stop!
Miami stepped forward, finally ready to keep her idol from committing murder.
Please, stop this!
Rah! Asuka tackled Ray to the ground, with Mayumi's grab missing her by mere centimetres.
You listening to me? Ayanami!
Asuka screamed while straddling the other girl. She grabbed Ray by the shoulders and slammed her against the floor. Ray only betrayed the slightest grimace of pain. I am listening.
This shouldn't have happened. Ayanami, stop sacrificing yourself! All three of us. We were supposed to be legends forever.
I am not her.
Don't you remember? You and him. You fit together so well, I was jealous. I thought there'd be no room for me in there, but you stubborn bitch, you stalked me and taunted me and argued with me. And before I knew it, we were friends.
I do not remember.
Ayanami, I'm sorry. I was too slow.
Some of her tears fell over Ray's red lips.
I broke our promise. I'm sorry. Please, he's in a coma. You died. I don't want to be alone again.
Mayumi ached to say something, but it was as if she'd lost control of her own body. She felt numb yet warm all over. She pressed her hands over her face, as if trying to muffle the sound of her own breathing, trying her hardest to become invisible. She tasted copper at the back of her throat, and her nose stung. Her nose was bleeding. This was a very private, very intimate moment. Asuka was in a full-blown panic attack, grinding on top of Ayanami. Days of repressed anger and despair and stress exploded in a single moment. Asuka let out a plaintive and Mayumi almost fainted right there.
I can't treat you like Wonder Girl. Her life had meaning. That means you're your own damn person now. Got it?
Ray 5 blinked. No?
You're Ayanami's little sister. I've decided. I won't use you as a replacement for her. That would disrespect her memory. You'll become your own person, and we'll be friends all over again. We're shaped by our experiences, and however your personality develops after losing the last year of your most important memories, fine, we'll deal with it!
Ray said nothing, but seemed to be deep in thought. Please get off. This is uncomfortable.
Sure. Shit, I've gone overboard right there, didn't I? I'm sorry, Ayanami. Believe that. Here, let's get you to the infirmary.
That will not be necessary. Please stay away from me. Asuka flinched.
Whatever you want, Fifth. Again,
I refuse your apology.
All right. Fair enough.
You are Soyu. You pilot over Unit 2. That's all that's necessary.
I'm gonna have to beat some self-respect into you. Again.
You're welcome to try. Asuka brightened up.
Wait, did you just...
said Ray. Then she headbutted Asuka. Mayumi staggered back and collapsed against the cold corridor wall. Her knees had finally lost strength. It was all she could do to try and burn into her memory this example of beautiful, writhing, violent, entangled, and utterly unbound friendship between girls. It was snowing over Tokyo 3. For weeks now, the Hakone region was blanketed in white, in a country that hadn't known winter for 15 years. There are only 3 entry points into the Hakone Valley region. Anachronistic as it may be, the Kriegers that accompanied Luftschloss Sternbrand had begun to dig out trenches and lay down barbed wire. Armour and air attacks were not a problem. Unit 2 could blast away whole countries at a glance. As ever, it was from the ground that the fortress city was so vulnerable. A final battle was coming, the Gotterdammerung of god machines. It seemed only fitting they should fight in the grip of an unnatural winter. Hans Ingram Wolfenbach nodded in thanks as the nerve employee handed him a cup of warm coffee. He still didn't understand a word of Japanese, though at least most people in Hakone understood some English, and the psychics could understand all human languages by instinct. Slowly he was starting to piece together what it meant to live inside the fortress city. There was pride there, bordering on arrogance. He could see it in their faces. There was hardness, but not of the paranoid type that saw every shadow as a potential enemy. If anything, the people, no matter if they were civilians or military and nerve employees first, or had followed the carry on his strange crusade later, they were too accepting, too eager to help, too willing to smile at a stranger, too relaxed about their own safety. It's as if death itself couldn't touch them. He knew that feeling. He'd expected it to fade as mundane reality reasserted itself. So far, reality was losing. When the blinding green light smashed through the clouds from above to the geofront, he was blown back. Scalding hot coffee spilled over his jacket and slowly soaked to his neck. As he stared up at the light, he could only think,
That's weird. I should be more surprised than this.
Examining just why he was so uninterested seemed the more fascinating thing, even as the ground trembled beneath him. He felt weightless. He saw the fallen cup shake and begin to impossibly rise up on its own.
Someone turned off gravity. I wonder if it's possible to make this permanent. That would be cool too.
The floating feeling abruptly twisted. And then that cruel laughter that dug into his soul. Misato was at the cafeteria when it happened. She clung to the table, which was bolted onto the floor, and with a stern look forbid Asuka from running off. After a few more seconds, the weightless feeling settled down. Everything was still trembling. Everyone felt too light on their feet, but they could move again. She nodded to Asuka, who kicked off and half-floated to the door. Someone approached to hand her a phone.
Ritsuko!
Misato yelled into it.
What's happening? The geofront's trying to rise again. I guess someone's trying to reclaim her lost property. What? Damn. Well, what can we do to stop it? This is why we've been remodeling Tokyo 3. The toy box is ready to initiate. This black moon is ours now. It's about time that alien bitch realised that.
Misato took a deep breath. This will change everything. Nothing in all of human history, save Second Impact, would ever be so insignificant.
All right. Do it.
Suddenly, Nagise interrupt! Space rippled into violet hues, and as if rising from still waters, the lost pristine reflection of the moon returned, shining bright, too bright, like silver tears from Luna's face. As the globe emerged fully, those monitoring the situation realised it was not as large as the moon. Smaller, smoother, a cold sphere, and deceptively gentle. At a leisurely 4.7 kilometres per second, it crashed into the bleeding red surface, sending viscous oceans rippling. Boiling fountains rose around the point of contact, and the veins of hot crimson agony crawled up the white sphere. Through the empty void of space, one could almost hear a white-haired boy shout,
Fuck you!
It was Pluto. Karo Nagisa's solution to Lilith's awakening was to drop Pluto on her head. It wasn't as if anyone would care. Pluto was no longer a planet anyway. No more schemes. He cut Gordian's knot along the remains of his sanity. Pluto and Luna clung to each other, shivering. Then they began to shatter. Space rippled again. Sharon ripped free of the void at much greater velocity, slamming into the back of its former parent, in a flash fracturing the larger planetoid and driving it even deeper into the Luna. Something screamed. Unnatural fires raged across the Earth's own captive planetoid, burning black the biomatter that covered its surface. Fissures burst out, exposing the moon's soft mantle, suddenly transformed into hot viscous liquid again. Luna bled. Pluto began to break apart, still deceptively gently, into shards delicate like eggshells and the size of continents. Down below, Asuka could only think,
That guy has no sense of restraint at all.
Her grip tightened on her Ava's controls.
We taught him that.
A star fell from the heavens. As always, trouble aimed towards Tokyo 3.